My daughter told me I would not get anything from my husband's $80 million will. She sat there all happy during the reading of the will. But then the attorney read one sentence and he smiled. "I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you everything. First, let me thank you for watching Granny's Voice. Please subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We might give you a shout out in our next video." Today's special shout out goes to Sarah Mitchell from Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you for being part of our family. Now let me tell you everything. My name is Eleanor Hayes. I'm 54 years old, living in a small house in Jacksonville, where broken dreams meet endless hope. I'm not one to complain about life, but some memories stick to your heart like honey on fingers. They remind me of happy times, of love, of my dear husband, and of the terrible day that changed everything. Let me share my story. A story that starts with the most wonderful years before everything fell apart. I was born and raised in Orlando, Florida, a busy city known for its beautiful attractions. But for my family, it wasn't just about theme parks and entertainment. It was about real estate, the property business that made the Hayes name famous. My husband, William Hayes, owned the biggest property company in the area. A gentle, kind man with bright blue eyes that sparkled when he smiled. He was the type of person who made everyone feel special just by talking to them. Not because he was rich, but because his heart was full of love for everyone around him. My daughter Sophia was completely different from William. Sharp and mean like a winter storm. She had cold gray eyes that looked at me as if I was nothing special. Our house was a big estate by the ocean, surrounded by palm trees that swayed in the warm Florida breeze. I remember lazy Sunday mornings when golden sunlight came through our kitchen windows, and William would sit at the breakfast table reading the newspaper in a voice as sweet as music. Sophia was often busy with her friends, but when she was home, our family would sit together in the living room watching movies and sharing stories. As a young wife and mother, I only knew that I was living in a perfect world where nothing could hurt our happiness. But life, as you know, never lets beautiful dreams stay peaceful forever. Everything changed one hot August afternoon just after Sophia turned 16. That was the day my memories turned dark with anger and pain. That day, Sophia came home from school with a group of mean friends. I was making lunch in the kitchen, humming a happy song when suddenly Sophia burst through the door, her voice loud and rude. "Mom, stay out of our way. We have important things to talk about." Confused, I didn't understand what was happening, only that my sweet daughter had become someone I didn't recognize. Behind her were three girls I had never seen before, dressed in expensive clothes and carrying designer bags. They looked at our house like they owned it. Their voices sharp and threatening. "Your mom seems nice, but she doesn't belong here." My heart started beating fast, not out of fear, but because I could feel the meanness coming from these strangers. I didn't know what to say, only stood there holding a sandwich, feeling small and confused. "No," I said quietly. "This is my home. You girls need to respect that." The leader of the group, a tall girl with bright red hair, laughed loudly, pointing at me in front of everyone. "She's so pathetic, isn't she? No wonder Sophia is embarrassed by her." I felt tears start to form in my eyes, but I held them back. I was 38 years old standing in my own kitchen, but I felt like a child being bullied at school. Sophia didn't defend me. Instead, she joined in the meanness. "Yeah," she said with a cold smile. "My mom doesn't understand how things work in the real world. She's just a housewife who got lucky marrying my dad." Those words hit me like rocks thrown at my chest. My own daughter, the little girl I had rocked to sleep and sang lullabies to, was now treating me like I was nothing. The group of girls laughed together, making jokes about my clothes, my hair, even the way I talked. Everything happened so quickly. I heard Sophia say, "She won't be around much longer anyway. Dad's getting tired of her." But my legs felt like they were stuck in mud. Then came the cruel laughter. One girl, then another, then all of them together, like hammers hitting my heart over and over. I ran to my bedroom, not because I was scared, but because my daughter had hurt me so badly that I couldn't breathe. I locked the door and sat on my bed, tears flowing down my face like a river. William was at work, and I was alone in our big house, feeling smaller than an ant. The girls stayed for hours, their mean voices echoing through the hallways. Sophia never came to apologize. She never knocked on my door to say she was sorry. She was gone, and so was my sweet little girl. From that day on, Sophia became someone I didn't know. She started treating me like I was her servant instead of her mother. She would order me around, tell me to clean her room, make her special meals, and drive her places without ever saying thank you. If I said no or asked her to be nicer, she would threaten to tell William that I was being mean to her. I felt trapped in my own home, walking on eggshells around my own daughter. William tried to help, but Sophia was very clever. She would act sweet and loving when he was around, then turn mean the second he left for work. She convinced him that I was just being too sensitive, that teenage girls were naturally difficult. I started to believe maybe I was the problem. Maybe I wasn't a good enough mother. Maybe I deserved the way she treated me. The happy family dinners became tense and quiet. Sophia would sit at the table texting on her phone, ignoring both William and me. When William tried to start conversations about her day or her friends, she would give short, rude answers that made everyone uncomfortable. I watched my husband's face grow sadder each day, seeing his beloved daughter slip away from us both. Our home, once filled with laughter and love, became like a cold museum where we all lived separate lives. I spent most of my time in the garden, taking care of my flowers or reading books in the library. It was the only place I felt peaceful. Sophia brought her mean friends over almost every day, and they would take over the living room, eating our food and making messes they never cleaned up. They talked about me like I wasn't even there, saying terrible things about my appearance and calling me names behind my back. Sometimes I would find them going through my personal things, my jewelry box, my photo albums, even my clothes. When I asked them to stop, they would laugh and say I was being paranoid. Sophia never told them to stop. Instead, she encouraged them, saying things like, "My mom has too much stuff anyway, and she won't even notice if something goes missing." I started hiding my most precious belongings. The necklace William gave me for our wedding, the watch my mother left me when she died, and my favorite books. I felt like a stranger in my own home, tiptoeing around teenagers who treated our house like their personal playground. Years passed, and Sophia only got worse. By the time she turned 18, she had convinced William that I was holding her back from her dreams. She wanted to go to an expensive college in Chicago, study fashion design, and live in a fancy apartment. She told William that I was jealous of her youth and trying to keep her from succeeding. This wasn't true, but William believed her because he loved his daughter so much. He started spending more money on Sophia, buying her everything she wanted. Designer clothes, expensive cars, trips to Australia with her friends. I watched our savings disappear while Sophia acted like she deserved it all. She never got a job, never helped around the house, and never showed any appreciation for what she was given. Instead, she demanded more and more, always saying she needed it for school or for her future career. When I tried to talk to William about setting limits, Sophia would cry and say I was trying to ruin her life. She was very good at making herself look like the victim while painting me as the villain. William, wanting to keep peace in the family, usually gave Sophia whatever she wanted and asked me to be more understanding. I felt like I was losing my husband to our daughter's manipulation, but I didn't know how to fight it without looking like the bad person. One evening, I tried to have a serious conversation with William about Sophia's behavior. We were sitting on our back porch watching the sunset over the ocean when I finally found the courage to speak up. "William," I said carefully, "I think Sophia is taking advantage of your kindness. She's spending too much money and not learning to be responsible." William sighed deeply, his blue eyes looking tired and sad. "Eleanor," he said gently, "Sophia is our only child. I want to give her the best life possible. Maybe you're just worried about her growing up and leaving us." I tried to explain that it wasn't about Sophia growing up. It was about her becoming selfish and cruel. But before I could finish talking, Sophia appeared at the porch door, her face red with anger. "I heard what you said, Mom," she shouted. "You're trying to turn Dad against me because you're jealous that he loves me more than you." She ran to William, crying fake tears and telling him that I had been saying terrible things about her all day. William looked at me with disappointment in his eyes, asking me to apologize to Sophia for hurting her feelings. I sat there in shock, watching my daughter lie so easily and my husband believe every word she said. That night, I lay in bed next to William, feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my life. He was sleeping peacefully, but I stared at the ceiling, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. I thought about the little girl Sophia used to be. The one who would run to me when she scraped her knee and ask me to kiss it better. I remembered reading her bedtime stories and teaching her to ride her bike in our driveway. Where had that sweet child gone? How had she become this angry young woman who seemed to hate me so much? I started to think that maybe it was my fault. Maybe I had been too strict when she was little. Or maybe I hadn't shown her enough love. Maybe I really was a bad mother who deserved to be treated badly. These thoughts ate away at my heart like little worms, making me feel smaller and more worthless every day. I stopped trying to defend myself when Sophia was mean to me. I stopped asking William for help when she demanded more money. I just tried to stay quiet and invisible, hoping that maybe if I didn't cause any trouble, Sophia might start being nicer to me. But she only got worse, treating my kindness like weakness and my silence like permission to hurt me even more. Sophia finished college with expensive degrees that William paid for. But instead of getting a job, she moved back home and acted like she was doing us a favor. She brought her boyfriend Derek to live with us too. Derek was a rude young man who treated our home like a hotel and me like the maid. He would leave his dirty clothes everywhere, eat all our food, and never help with any chores. When I asked him politely to clean up after himself, he would laugh and say, "That's what mothers are for, right?" Sophia thought this was funny and would join in making jokes about how I was like their personal servant. She started bringing home different boyfriends every few months, each one ruder than the last. They would party in our house until late at night, making noise and leaving messes for me to clean up. When I complained to William, he would say that Sophia was young and needed to have fun before settling down. I felt like I was living in a nightmare where everyone else was having fun, and I was the only one suffering. William worked long hours at his company, trying to make enough money to support Sophia's expensive lifestyle. He looked tired and stressed all the time, but Sophia never seemed to notice or care. When William turned 60, the doctor found something terrible: cancer. It started in his lungs and spread quickly through his body. William became weaker and sicker every day, needing constant care and medical attention. I quit the part-time job I had started and devoted all my time to taking care of my husband. I drove him to doctor appointments, gave him his medicines, and sat by his bed during his worst days. Sophia, however, acted like her father's illness was an inconvenience that was ruining her social life. She complained that the house was too quiet now, that she couldn't have parties anymore, and that everyone was always sad. She rarely visited William in his room, and when she did, it was only to ask for money or to complain about something. I watched my husband's heart break a little more each day as he realized that his beloved daughter didn't really care about his suffering. She was only interested in what she could get from him. William tried to talk to Sophia about spending more time together, about the importance of family, but she would just roll her eyes and find excuses to leave. I wanted to shake her and make her understand that her father was dying, that these might be their last months together. But Sophia seemed to live in her own world where nothing mattered except her own happiness. One night when William was very sick and couldn't sleep, he asked me to sit with him. The room was dark except for a small lamp by his bed, and I could hear his breathing was getting harder. "Eleanor," he said in a weak voice, "I'm worried about what will happen to you after I'm gone." I held his hand, feeling how thin and cold it had become. "Don't talk like that, William. You're going to get better." We both knew that wasn't true, but I wanted to give him hope. He squeezed my hand with what little strength he had left. "Sophia doesn't treat you well," he whispered. "I've seen how she talks to you, how she makes you feel small. I'm sorry I didn't do more to stop it." Tears started rolling down my face because William finally saw what had been happening for years. I tried to tell him it wasn't his fault, that Sophia was just going through a difficult phase, but he shook his head. No, Eleanor, she's become selfish and mean, and I failed as a father by letting it happen. I don't want you to suffer after I'm gone. I leaned down and kissed his forehead, tasting the salt from my own tears. You're the best husband and father anyone could ask for, I told him. Sophia will learn to be better someday. But in my heart, I wasn't sure that was true. William had seen through Sophia's act, and it was breaking his heart to know that his daughter had become someone he didn't recognize. From that night on, William started making phone calls to his lawyer, having private meetings, and writing letters that he kept locked in his desk drawer. I didn't ask what he was doing because I could see it was important to him. Sophia noticed the meetings too, but she assumed William was just organizing his business affairs. She started being extra sweet to him, bringing him flowers and telling him how much she loved him. I could see she was worried about the inheritance and wanted to make sure she stayed in his good books. It made me sad to watch her fake kindness when all William wanted was real love from his daughter. He was dying and all she could think about was money. William's condition got worse rapidly. The cancer was winning and the doctor said there wasn't much time left. I spent every moment I could by his side, reading to him from his favorite books and playing the music he loved. Sophia pretended to be the perfect daughter whenever doctors or visitors were around, crying and saying how much she would miss her daddy. But when we were alone, she would ask me questions like, "Do you know what Dad's leaving me in his will?" And, "I hope he didn't waste money on those stupid medical treatments." Her coldness during her father's final days showed me just how much she had changed from the little girl I once knew. I realized that Sophia didn't just dislike me. She had become someone who only cared about herself and what she could get from others. William passed away on a rainy Tuesday morning in March. I was holding his hand when he took his last breath and I felt like half of my heart died with him. Sophia wasn't there. She had gone out partying the night before and was still sleeping when her father passed away. When I called to tell her, she seemed more annoyed at being woken up than sad about losing her father. The funeral was held at the biggest church in Orlando, and hundreds of people came to say goodbye to William. Business partners, employees, friends, and neighbors all shared stories about how kind and generous he had been. I wore the black dress William had bought me for our anniversary last year, and I tried to be brave for everyone who was grieving with me. Sophia wore a designer black outfit that probably cost more than most people's cars. She stood next to me during the service, holding my arm and crying loudly for everyone to see. People kept coming up to us saying how sorry they were for our loss and how they were sure William was proud of his beautiful family. Sophia soaked up all the sympathy and attention, playing the role of the heartbroken daughter perfectly. But I knew the truth. During the reception after the funeral, Sophia disappeared for an hour to make phone calls about party plans for the weekend. She complained to her friends that the funeral was taking too long and that she wanted to go home and change clothes. I heard her tell someone on the phone that she was tired of pretending to be sad when she was actually excited about inheriting her father's money. My heart broke all over again, not just because I had lost my husband but because I realized I had also lost the daughter I thought I knew. After the funeral, our house felt huge and empty. Every room reminded me of William, his favorite chair in the living room, his coffee mug still sitting in the kitchen sink, his books scattered around his home office. I walked through our home like a ghost, touching things that still smelled like him and crying until I had no tears left. Sophia, on the other hand, seemed to come alive after her father's death. She started making plans for redecorating the house, talking about selling some of William's things, and even mentioned wanting to turn his office into a closet for her clothes. She acted like she was already the owner of everything, making decisions without asking me what I thought. When I tried to tell her that some of William's belongings were special to me and I wanted to keep them, she would laugh and say, "Mom, you can't keep everything forever. Dad would want us to move on." But I knew William wouldn't want his memory erased so quickly, and he definitely wouldn't want me to feel like a stranger in my own home. 2 weeks after William's funeral, Sophia sat me down at our kitchen table with a serious look on her face. She had papers spread out in front of her and a calculator like she was running a business meeting. "Mom," she said in a voice that sounded grown up but mean. We need to talk about the future. I poured myself a cup of tea and sat across from her, wondering what she wanted to discuss. I've been thinking about the house, the money, and all of Dad's stuff, she continued. I think it would be best if you moved out and let me handle everything. My hands started shaking as I held my teacup. What do you mean move out? This is my home too. Sophia rolled her eyes like I was being stupid. Mom, face the facts. Dad left everything to me because I'm his child and you're just his wife. Wives can be replaced, but daughters are forever. Those words hit me like a slap across the face. Just his wife. After 22 years of marriage, after taking care of William through his illness, after loving him with every piece of my heart, Sophia continued talking like she was explaining something simple to a child. I think you should find a nice little apartment somewhere cheap and start learning how to take care of yourself. Maybe get a job at a store or something. I can help you pack your things this weekend. I stared at my daughter, this young woman I had given birth to and raised with so much love, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Sophia, I said quietly, your father loved me. He wouldn't want you to kick me out of our home. She laughed, a cold sound that made me feel sick to my stomach. Mom, you're living in a fantasy. Dad married you because you were pretty and young, but that was a long time ago. Now you're old and boring, and frankly, I'm embarrassed to have friends see you around. I tried to argue, to explain that marriage meant being partners and family meant taking care of each other, but Sophia had already made up her mind. She told me that the lawyer would be reading William's will next week, and I would see for myself that everything belonged to her. She was so confident, so sure that her father had left her everything that she started making plans for my departure right there at the kitchen table. I excused myself and went to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. I sat on the bed I had shared with William and looked at his pillow, still carrying the faint scent of his aftershave. I picked up the phone to call my sister Claire, who lived across the country in Texas. Through my tears, I told her everything that Sophia had said, how she wanted me to move out, how she claimed William had left everything to her. Claire was furious. Eleanor, she said, that girl has been spoiled rotten her whole life and now she thinks she owns the world. Don't you dare let her push you around in your own home. But I felt so tired and beaten down that I didn't know how to fight anymore. William had always been my protector, the one who made me feel strong and loved. Without him, I felt like a small boat lost in a big storm with no lighthouse to guide me home. Claire kept talking, trying to encourage me and remind me of my rights as William's wife. But all I could think about was how different Sophia had become and how alone I felt in the world. The next few days were torture. Sophia acted like she was already the boss of the house, going through William's belongings and making lists of things she wanted to keep, sell, or throw away. She packed up some of his clothes to donate without asking me. And when I protested, she said I was being too sentimental about useless old things. She invited her friends over to help her go through the house, and I listened to them laughing and joking about how much money different items might be worth. They treated our family memories like garage sale items, discussing which furniture would look good in Sophia's future apartment and which pieces were too old-fashioned to keep. I tried to save a few special things. William's favorite coffee mug, the photo album from our honeymoon, his reading glasses that still sat on his nightstand. But every time Sophia saw me holding on to something, she would find a reason why I didn't need it or couldn't keep it. She was slowly erasing William from our home and making me feel like I had no right to preserve our memories. I started hiding things in my bedroom, small items that reminded me of our happy years together. During those awful days, I found an old letter in William's desk drawer. My hands were shaking as I unfolded the paper and saw his familiar handwriting. My dearest Eleanor, he had written, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you, and I am so sorry to leave you alone. I know Sophia has not been kind to you, and I fear she will be even worse after I'm gone. Please remember that you are not alone, that you are stronger than you know, and that I have made arrangements to protect you. The letter was dated just 2 months before he died, and it made me cry both from sadness and from relief. William had seen what was happening and he had tried to take care of me even after his death. I folded the letter carefully and hid it with my other precious things, holding on to his words like a life preserver in rough waters. For the first time since the funeral, I felt a tiny spark of hope that maybe things would turn out differently than Sophia expected. The day before the will reading, Sophia threw a party at our house. She invited dozens of her friends and told everyone that she was about to inherit millions of dollars from her dear departed father. I watched from my bedroom window as young people filled our backyard, drinking expensive wine from William's collection and swimming in the pool where he and I used to float together on quiet evenings. The music was loud, the laughter was harsh, and it felt like they were celebrating on top of William's grave. Sophia wore a new dress that probably cost more than some people's monthly salary, and she kept telling everyone about her plans for the money. She was going to buy a penthouse in Chicago, travel to Australia for 6 months, and maybe start her own fashion business with Daddy's money. Her friends cheered and congratulated her, calling her lucky and saying how wonderful it must be to have such a generous father. Nobody mentioned that William had just died, that this was supposed to be a time for grief and remembering, not for partying and planning shopping sprees. I felt sick watching the celebration, but I also felt a strange sense of calm. William's letter had given me strength, and I knew that tomorrow would bring answers to all the questions that had been keeping me awake at night. I went to bed early, leaving Sophia and her friends to their party. And for the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. I dreamed about William, and in my dream he was smiling and telling me that everything would be okay. The morning of the will reading arrived gray and cloudy, matching my nervous mood. I put on my best blue dress, the one William always said brought out the color in my eyes, and tried to eat some breakfast. Sophia was surprisingly quiet, probably tired from her party, but she kept checking her appearance in the mirror and practicing what she would say to the lawyer. She had prepared a whole speech about how grateful she was to be William's daughter, and how she planned to honor his memory by using his money wisely. I almost laughed knowing that Sophia's idea of using money wisely was buying designer shoes and expensive vacations. We drove to the lawyer's office in silence, each lost in our own thoughts about what the day would bring. The lawyer's office was in a tall building downtown with big windows that looked out over Orlando Bay. I remembered coming here with William years ago to sign papers when we bought our house, and the memory made me feel close to him again. The waiting room was decorated with expensive furniture and paintings of ships sailing on calm seas. Sophia sat next to me, tapping her foot impatiently and checking her phone every few minutes. She had invited her friend Vanessa to come with her for moral support, and Vanessa kept whispering about how exciting it was to watch someone inherit so much money. I felt like I was watching a show where I didn't know my lines, sitting quietly with my hands folded while everyone else seemed to know what was going to happen. The secretary called us into the main office where Mr. Patterson, William's lawyer, was waiting behind a large wooden desk. He was an older man with kind eyes and a gentle smile, and he had helped William with business matters for over 15 years. He greeted us politely and asked us to sit down, then began arranging papers on his desk with careful precision. Mr. Patterson looked at both Sophia and me with a serious expression. "Before I begin reading the will," he said in a quiet voice, "I want you to know that your husband and father put a great deal of thought into these arrangements. He loved you both very much, and every decision he made was based on that love." Sophia shifted in her chair, clearly eager to hear the part about her inheritance. I just nodded, feeling nervous, but also curious about what William had planned. Mr. Patterson opened the first document and began to read in a clear, professional voice. "This is the last will and testament of William James Hayes," he announced. Sophia sat up straighter and Vanessa leaned forward in her chair, both of them hanging on every word. The first part of the will was about small gifts to William's employees and donations to his favorite charities. Sophia looked bored during this section, drumming her fingers on the arm of her chair and sighing loudly. Then Mr. Patterson came to the section about personal belongings, and Sophia's attention snapped back to focus. "To my beloved daughter Sophia," William had written, "I leave my watch collection, my golf clubs, and my classic car collection." Sophia smiled widely and squeezed Vanessa's hand, whispering, "Yes," under her breath. Those cars alone were worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the watches were collector's items that William had been gathering for decades. But I noticed that Mr. Patterson kept reading, and his expression seemed to change slightly. "To my dear wife Eleanor," he continued, "I leave all of my personal photographs, my book collection, and my mother's jewelry." I felt touched that William had remembered how much I loved looking at old family photos and reading the books he enjoyed. His mother's jewelry wasn't extremely valuable, but it had sentimental worth that meant everything to me. Sophia rolled her eyes at this part, clearly thinking that books and old jewelry were worthless compared to cars and watches. Then Mr. Patterson paused and looked up at us before continuing. "Now we come to the matter of the house, the business, and the financial assets." The room became completely quiet except for the sound of Sophia's rapid breathing. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the announcement that would make her rich beyond her wildest dreams. Mr. Patterson adjusted his glasses and continued reading. "To my daughter Sophia Hayes, I leave the sum of $50,000 to help start her adult life along with my blessing and hopes for her future happiness." Sophia's face went white as paper. $50,000. That was a nice amount of money, but it was nowhere near the millions she had been expecting. She started to say something, but Mr. Patterson held up his hand to indicate he wasn't finished reading. "To my beloved wife Eleanor Hayes, who has been my partner, my best friend, and my greatest love for 22 wonderful years. I leave everything else, the house, the business, all remaining financial assets, and all property not specifically mentioned above." The silence in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Sophia stared at Mr. Patterson like he had just spoken in a foreign language. Her mouth was hanging open and her face had gone from white to bright red. Vanessa looked confused, glancing back and forth between Sophia and me like she was watching a tennis match. I sat perfectly still, not sure I had heard correctly. Everything else, the house, the business, the investments, William had left it all to me. Sophia suddenly exploded out of her chair, pointing at Mr. Patterson with a shaking finger. "This is wrong," she screamed. "There has to be a mistake. My father would never leave everything to her." She gestured at me like I was something disgusting she had found on the bottom of her shoe. "I'm his daughter. I'm his blood. She's just some woman he married." Mr. Patterson remained calm, his voice steady and professional. "Miss Hayes, I assure you there is no mistake. Your father was very clear about his wishes, and this will was written and witnessed according to all legal requirements." Sophia began pacing around the small office like a caged animal, her designer heels clicking loudly on the wooden floor. "This isn't fair," she shouted. "I'm young and I need that money to start my life. She's old and she'll probably die soon anyway. What does she need with a big house and a business?" Vanessa tried to calm Sophia down, but she was beyond reason, waving her arms and talking so fast that her words ran together. I sat quietly in my chair, still trying to process what I had just heard. William had protected me. Even though Sophia had convinced him to spend so much money on her over the years, even though she had been so good at playing the role of the perfect daughter, William had seen through her act. He knew how she really felt about me and he had made sure I would be safe after he was gone. Sophia turned to face me, her gray eyes blazing with anger. "You did this," she accused. "You poisoned my father against me. You made him think I was a bad daughter so he would leave everything to you." I looked at my daughter, this young woman who had caused me so much pain over the years, and I felt something surprising. Not anger, not triumph, just deep sadness. "Sophia," I said quietly, "your father loved you very much. But he also saw how you treated me, how you treated him during his illness, and how you only seemed to care about money." Sophia laughed, but it was a bitter sound with no happiness in it. "Please, Mom, don't act like you're some kind of saint. You probably whined and complained to Dad about me every chance you got." Mr. Patterson cleared his throat and spoke firmly. "Miss Hayes, your father left a letter explaining his decision. Would you like me to read it?" Sophia stopped pacing and stared at him. "A letter? What kind of letter?" Mr. Patterson pulled out another document. This one handwritten on William's personal stationery. He began to read in the same steady voice he had used for the will. My dear Sophia, your father had written, I hope you will understand that my decision about the inheritance was not made to hurt you, but to protect someone I love who cannot protect herself. I folded my hands in my lap, feeling tears start to form as I heard William's words from beyond the grave. Over the past few years, I have watched you become someone I don't recognize. You have been cruel to Eleanor, who has never been anything but kind to you. You have taken advantage of my love and generosity without ever saying thank you or showing appreciation. When I was sick and dying, you seemed more concerned about going to parties than spending time with your father. I realized that giving you millions of dollars would not make you a better person. The letter continued, and Sophia's face grew redder with each word. It would only make your selfishness worse and allow you to hurt more people. I am giving you enough money to start your adult life. But I am trusting Eleanor to use the rest of my assets wisely because she has a good heart and truly cared for me. Not just my money. I hope someday you will learn what real love means and become the kind person I always believed you could be. Your father, William Hayes. When Mr. Patterson finished reading the letter, the office was completely silent except for the sound of Sophia crying angry tears. She wasn't crying because she was sad about losing her father or because she realized she had been wrong. She was crying because she wasn't getting what she wanted. Vanessa stood up and put her arm around Sophia, whispering things like, "This is so unfair and you should fight this in court." Sophia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her expensive makeup, and glared at me with pure hatred. "This isn't over, Mom," she said in a voice like poison. "I'm going to contest this will. I'm going to prove that you tricked Dad somehow, that you made him write this when he was too sick to think clearly." Mr. Patterson shook his head sadly. "Miss Hayes, your father was examined by 3 different doctors before signing this will. They all confirmed that he was mentally competent and understood exactly what he was doing. This document is legally binding and cannot be challenged on those grounds." Sophia slammed her purse down on the desk, making everyone jump. "Then I'll find another way," she shouted. "I'll hire the best lawyers in Florida. I'll spend every penny I have to prove this is wrong." She turned to storm out of the office, but stopped at the door to look back at me. "You think you've won, but you haven't. I'll make your life so miserable you'll wish Dad had never met you." After Sophia and Vanessa left, slamming the door behind them, Mr. Patterson and I sat quietly for a few minutes. I felt overwhelmed by everything that had just happened, like I was in a dream that might disappear at any moment. Mr. Patterson poured me a glass of water and spoke gently. "Mrs. Hayes, your husband was a very wise man. He saw what was happening in your family and he wanted to make sure you were protected." I took a sip of water, my hands still shaking slightly. "Mr. Patterson," I said quietly, "I never asked William for anything. I never complained about Sophia or tried to turn him against her." "I know," he replied with a kind smile. "That's exactly why he trusted you with everything he worked so hard to build. He knew you would use his legacy to help people, not just to buy expensive things for yourself." Over the next hour, Mr. Patterson explained all the details of my inheritance. The house was now completely mine along with all the furniture and belongings inside it. William's real estate business was also mine, though Mr. Patterson suggested I might want to hire a manager to help run it since I didn't have experience in that field. The bank accounts and investments were worth more than I had ever imagined. William had been very good with money, saving, and investing wisely over the years. There was enough to keep me comfortable for the rest of my life, with plenty left over to help charities and other people in need. But the most surprising thing was a separate account that William had set up specifically for Sophia, even though he had been disappointed in her behavior. He had created a trust fund that would give her a monthly allowance for the rest of her life. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough to live comfortably if she learned to budget and be responsible. The catch was that she would only get this money if she stopped trying to contest the will, and if she agreed to attend family counseling to work on her attitude problems. Mr. Patterson handed me the papers about Sophia's trust fund and smiled. Your husband hoped that losing the big inheritance might teach Sophia some important lessons about life. He still loved her. Even though he was disappointed in the person she had become, he wanted to give her a chance to grow up and become better. I drove home from the lawyer's office in a daze, hardly believing that everything had changed so dramatically in just one morning. As I pulled into the driveway of what was now officially my house, I noticed that Sophia's car was already there. She had beaten me home and was probably inside making phone calls to lawyers or complaining to her friends about the unfairness of life. I sat in the car for a few minutes, gathering my courage for whatever scene was waiting for me inside. When I walked through the front door, I could hear Sophia shouting on the phone in the living room. She was talking to someone about hiring a lawyer to fight the will, claiming that I had somehow brainwashed her father or forged legal documents. Her voice was shrill and angry, filled with words that no daughter should ever say about her mother. I walked quietly to the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea, trying to stay calm despite the chaos happening in the next room. After a few minutes, Sophia appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face red and puffy from crying and yelling. She looked at me like I was her worst enemy instead of the woman who had given birth to her and raised her with love. Well, she said in a voice dripping with sarcasm, I hope you're happy now. You've got everything you wanted. Dad's money, the house, the business. You probably planned this whole thing from the day you married him. I sat down my teacup and looked at my daughter. Really looked at her maybe for the first time in years. Sophia, I said calmly, I never planned anything. I married your father because I loved him and I took care of him when he was sick because that's what people do when they love each other. I never asked him to leave me anything in his will. Sophia laughed, but there was no humor in it. Please, Mom. Nobody is that nice. You must have done something to make him change his mind about leaving everything to me. Normal fathers leave their money to their children, not to their wives. I tried to explain that William had seen how she treated both of us, how she only seemed to care about money and expensive things, but Sophia didn't want to hear it. She had convinced herself that I was the villain in this story, and nothing I said was going to change her mind. Our conversation was interrupted by the doorbell ringing. Sophia ran to answer it, and I heard her talking excitedly to someone at the front door. She came back to the kitchen, followed by a tall man in an expensive suit carrying a briefcase. This is Mr. Richardson, Sophia announced with a triumphant smile. He's the lawyer who's going to help me get what's rightfully mine. Mr. Richardson looked uncomfortable as he shook my hand and introduced himself. He explained that Sophia had called his office and asked him to come over immediately to discuss contesting William's will. I could tell from his expression that he had already explained to Sophia that her case was very weak, but she had insisted he come anyway. Mrs. Hayes, he said politely, I've reviewed the basic information Miss Sophia gave me, and I have to be honest with you both. Based on what I've heard, there are no grounds for successfully challenging this will. It was properly witnessed. Your husband was mentally competent, and the distribution of assets is completely legal. Sophia's face fell as she realized that even the lawyer she had hired wasn't confident about winning her case. But there must be something we can do, Sophia insisted desperately. Maybe we can prove that Mom influenced Dad somehow, or that he was taking medication that affected his thinking. Mr. Richardson shook his head gently. Miss Hayes, challenging a will is extremely difficult and expensive, especially when the deceased person was examined by medical professionals who confirmed his mental capacity. Even if we could find some small technicality to question, you would probably spend more on legal fees than you could ever hope to win. The $50,000 your father left you would disappear quickly, and you might end up with nothing. Sophia looked like someone had slapped her. She had been so sure that hiring a lawyer would solve all her problems, that she could somehow force the legal system to give her what she wanted. But real life doesn't work that way. Courts don't change wills just because someone is unhappy with what they received. Mr. Richardson packed up his briefcase and prepared to leave, telling Sophia that if she changed her mind and wanted to discuss her options more carefully, she could call his office for an appointment. After the lawyer left, Sophia collapsed into a chair at the kitchen table and started crying again. But these weren't angry tears anymore. They were the tears of someone who had finally realized that her actions have consequences, that being mean to people can come back to hurt you. For the first time since William's death, Sophia looked like a lost little girl instead of an angry young woman demanding her way. I sat down across from her and handed her a box of tissues. "Sophia," I said softly, "your father still loved you even after everything that happened. He wanted to make sure you had enough money to live on. There's a trust fund he set up that will give you monthly payments for life." Sophia looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "What do you mean?" I explained about the trust fund that William had created, how it would provide her with a steady income as long as she stopped trying to contest the will and agreed to get counseling to work on her relationship problems. It wasn't the millions she had been expecting, but it was security and a chance to start over with a better attitude. Sophia listened quietly as I explained all the conditions of the trust fund. She would get enough money each month to rent a nice apartment, buy food and clothes, and live comfortably without having to worry about being homeless or hungry. But she would have to prove that she was trying to become a better person, attending therapy sessions, and learning how to treat people with kindness and respect. If she could do that for 2 years, the trust fund would continue for the rest of her life. If she kept being mean and selfish, the money would stop. "Your father believed that people can change," I told her. "He hoped that maybe losing the big inheritance would help you understand what's really important in life." Sophia was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands folded in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and sad. "Mom," she whispered, "I know I've been terrible to you. I know I said awful things and made you feel bad. I don't even remember why I started being so mean. It just seemed easier to blame you for things than to look at myself." I reached across the table and took Sophia's hand the way I used to when she was a little girl with scraped knees or hurt feelings. "Sophia," I said gently, "I never stopped loving you, even when you were cruel to me. You're my daughter, and nothing will ever change that. But I can't pretend that the way you've treated me was okay. If you really want to start over, you have to be honest about the mistakes you've made and work hard to become better." Sophia squeezed my hand and nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I want to try," she said. "I want to be the kind of person Dad could be proud of. I don't want to spend the rest of my life being angry and mean. Will you help me?" For the first time in years, I saw a glimpse of the sweet little girl Sophia used to be. The one who would climb into my lap when she was scared and ask me to read her bedtime stories. Maybe it wasn't too late for us to have a real mother-daughter relationship. Maybe William's plan would work and Sophia would learn to be kind and caring instead of selfish and cruel. Over the next few weeks, Sophia and I began the slow process of rebuilding our relationship. She moved out of the big house and into a small apartment across town, using some of her $50,000 inheritance to pay the deposit and buy basic furniture. For the first time in her adult life, Sophia had to budget her money carefully and make choices about what she could and couldn't afford. She couldn't buy designer clothes every week or eat at expensive restaurants whenever she wanted. She had to learn to cook simple meals, do her own laundry, and live within her means like most people do. First, Sophia complained about everything. Her apartment was too small. Her neighbors were too noisy, and she missed having someone to clean up after her. But gradually, she started to take pride in taking care of herself. She learned to cook her father's favorite soup recipe, and she called to tell me about small victories like successfully fixing a leaky faucet or organizing her closet. These might seem like tiny accomplishments to most people, but for Sophia, they were huge steps toward independence and responsibility. William's final gift to both of us wasn't just money or property. It was the chance for our family to heal and for Sophia to become the person he always hoped she could be. And as I watched my daughter slowly transform from a selfish young woman into someone capable of kindness and gratitude, I knew that William's love had found a way to protect us both, even from beyond the grave.